When Miriam arrived in the Bahamas, she was stunned to see a couple who looked exactly like her daughter and son-in-law. But that was impossible. They had died in a car accident 5 years ago. Unable to ignore the uncanny resemblance, she felt compelled to follow them and demand the truth. After the confrontation, Miriam faced a difficult decision. Should she call the police or keep what she had learned to herself? The past few years had been tough on Miriam for many reasons, but she had finally saved enough to take her dream vacation to the Bahamas. She was older now and traveling alone, but that didn't bother her in the slightest. This trip was about relaxation, lounging on a beach chair, getting lost in books, sipping pina coladas, and simply enjoying herself. She had earned this. After all the struggles, she deserved a little paradise. When the airport shuttle pulled up to her hotel, she stepped off eagerly, inhaling the fresh sea breeze as the sounds of tourists laughing and music playing filled the air. A wide smile spread across her face as she stretched out her arms. "Oh, this is the life," she sighed contentedly. "Welcome to the Ocean Club." A cheerful hotel employee greeted her, quickly stepping forward to take her bags. "Thank you, young man," Miriam responded, crinkling her eyes and reaching into her purse for some cash to tip. She followed him into the resort, almost skipping despite her age to the check-in desk. When the employee left after receiving his tip, Miriam's eyes landed on a couple by the gift shop looking at the display items in the window. But that wasn't unusual. What caught her attention was their unfathomable and unbelievable resemblance to her daughter, Pamela, and her husband, Frank. But it wasn't possible because both had died 5 years ago. The pain of losing them was so acute that Miriam had struggled for a long time, which is why this vacation was so important to her. She had grieved for a long time, and it was now essential to keep living her life. She never expected to find two people who looked exactly like them at her hotel. "Ma'am, are you checking in? Can you tell me your full name?" the hotel clerk asked, distracting her. She turned for a second. "Do you know that couple's name?" she asked, pointing back, but then focused on the clerk. When Miriam turned back to the gift shop window, she realized that the couple was walking away and exiting the hotel. She couldn't lose them. The older woman rapidly pushed her bags toward the desk. "Please, I'm Mrs. Leary. Keep my bags for a second. I'll be right back." Then Miriam ran to the front, looked left and right, and saw the couple walking to the right. They could be anyone. This could be a coincidence. But she would wonder, what if, for the rest of her life, if she didn't follow them? "Pamela," she yelled, taking a shot. Surprisingly, the woman turned, her eyes flaring, and Miriam knew it was her daughter. Pamela turned to her husband and said something to him urgently. Frank looked back, his gaze shocked and scared. Afterwards, they held hands and walked faster. "Don't walk away from me," Miriam yelled desperately, trying to get closer. "I'll call the police." Those words finally stopped them in their tracks, and the older woman was able to catch up to them. "Pamela? Frank? Why are you here? What's going on?" she asked, breathless, confused, and agitated. Pamela turned her whole body but kept her face down, ashamed. "Hey, Mom," she whispered. Frank said nothing, but his eyes were also looking at the floor. They were like two kids who had just gotten caught in a prank. "Well, are you going to say anything?" Miriam demanded, her feelings shifting from wanting to cry to indignation. Their guilt was confusing, but her instincts told her they had done something wrong. "I think it's best we go back to the hotel and talk," Frank requested quietly. Miriam looked between them and nodded firmly. "Okay, out with it, and I want the truth. You two look guilty as hell, so I know something is wrong," Miriam said as soon as they entered Frank and Pamela's hotel room. "Mom, please calm down," her daughter coaxed. "I will not calm down," Miriam snapped. "You have 2 minutes to explain, or I'll go mad." "Yes, we faked our deaths," Frank exclaimed. "We admit that, but we, had to." The older woman wondered. "Why? What did you do?" "Nothing," Pamela answered. "It's just we won the lottery." "Excuse me?" Miriam closed her eyes and crossed her arms. "We won the lottery. It was a lot of money, and I know that if others found out, they would ask to borrow," Frank confirmed. The older woman's eyes squinted as she began stuttering. "You thought your family would ask for money?" "I knew they would have," he continued, nodding forcefully. "Didn't you borrow money from your brother's wife for your stupid startup?" Miriam continued. "It wasn't stupid." "You're right. It was stupid to think the startup would just work on its own without any real effort, she added, getting angrier. She looked at Pamela. You went along with this? Mom, he's my husband, her daughter answered sheepishly and regretfully. So you're both saying that instead of paying back what you owed, instead of helping family and building something great with your loved ones, you decided to run away. The angry sarcasm dripped from Miriam's voice. Not just run away. You faked your deaths. I'm sorry, Mom. Yes, we're sorry, Mrs. Leary, but we can't return, Frank added. You're escaping tax payments too, aren't you? Miriam looked at her son-in-law with flaring nostrils and piercing eyes. Frank licked his lips and looked down. The older woman turned to her daughter. You accepted all of this, not caring how it would destroy everyone, how it would affect me. You could have kept the money a secret. This is ridiculous, Mom, Pamela said, almost whining. Miriam's disappointment drained her energy. You're both cowards, frauds, and cheats. Pamela, I'll give you one chance to come back home with me, right your wrongs, and pay your penance. I can't. Yes, you can, and you know this was wrong. I don't care about the money, but doing this to us, to me, is unforgivable unless you act now to atone for it. The older woman continued, getting closer to her daughter. Please. She's not going back, Frank stated firmly. His guilt was gone. Our lives are great now. We have money for the rest of our lives and can live well. Miriam's gaze was fixed solely on her daughter, silently pleading with her. But Pamela only shook her head and looked down. Where did I go wrong? Miriam murmured. She released her daughter's hand, picked up her bag, and walked out of the room. Later, she found herself back at the airport, her vacation utterly ruined. Throughout the flight home, she wrestled with a single question. Should she call someone? Should she alert the authorities? But once she arrived, Miriam knew she couldn't. She couldn't bear the thought of her daughter facing legal consequences, at least not yet. If Pamela was ever going to make things right, it had to be on her own terms. So, Miriam stayed silent. Her silence wasn't indifference. It was a quiet invitation, an olive branch extended in hope. But Pamela never reached for it. What can we learn from this story? Trust your instincts. Miriam acted swiftly when she saw people who looked like her daughter and son-in-law, and her gut feeling was right. As parents, we can't always control the choices our children make, but we can keep the door open for them. Miriam chose not to report Pamela's fake death, holding on to the hope that her daughter would eventually do the right thing.